Hello, everyone. This is a special episode of the StudioMEcast. A lot of the time we, talk about media or movies, and who knows if that'll be part of it today or not. But my old friend Leon is in town right now, and I thought it'd be a great opportunity to have a conversation. And he's here joining me today. So, Leon, thanks a lot for making the trip. I know you're in town already and stuff, but thanks a lot for making time.
No problem.
So, you and I have talked a lot over the years, but there's, as time has gone by, there's just stuff anytime we meet, I think I've probably got a billion questions for you or something. But, I know you through Two Trees Incorporated. We went out to the res together a few times. We've done some symposiums for Native activities, but that's kind of where we, I think, spent the most time, but I just kind of, let's start with, how old are you?
60 years old.
Oh.
It's like 60 years old and still being a lacrosse goalie after 49 years. So.
Oh, wow. I'm glad you're doing that still. Where were you born?
I was born in Watertown, New York, and I was actually born in an accident. So.
Oh, really? What do you mean?
My mother was in an accident. I was born premature.
Like a car accident?
Car accident.
Oh, wow.
And I wasn't supposed to make it, and they kind of wrote me off because I was partially frozen when they got me to the hospital, and born in February in the Adirondacks. And
jeez, man.
But I made it to 60, so.
Well, I'm happy you have. So, who are your parents?
My mother's Tonawanda Seneca, Lucille M. McAndrews, and her bloodlines go back to corn planter and Guyasuta. So that's my Seneca side follows on that. My father's side is Keith L. Mayo, and he's from Ginnawagi up in Quebec. And they've both have passed on. And a lot of the things that we've had and things that we do was passed down through generations, and a lot of the teachings. A lot of what I've learned from about my father was sitting with other elders that worked with him and did things through the Longhouse, and so it was. I never really got to meet him, but some of the chief. When I was at Gaydet's house, he said, yeah, he would come and visit me, but that's kind of where we're at. So my bloodlines go both to the Mohawk and then the Seneca.
Do you have any siblings?
My family is all deceased. I had brothers and sisters. My mother was killed Christmas Eve, 1985. She was a Pennsylvania state trooper. She was killed in a hit-and-run accident, and unfortunately my brothers and sisters were all in the military, and when they got out, and then after my mother's death, I lost them all, my whole family, within 3 years to either murder or suicide. So never been a good thing, and then everything happened between Christmas and Thanksgiving, so makes it a hard time of the year.
Yeah. Where did you go to school?
I started off up in Akron, New York, because we were living on the Tonawanda Indian Reservation where I'm from. Then in early 70s, we moved to Waterford, Pennsylvania. Then I was there for a few years. Then we moved back to the reservation. Then we ended up moving back to Waterford in 1975, and I ended up finishing school and graduating at Fort LaBeouf High School in Waterford, Pennsylvania. There, and it's kind of a historical town. That's where George Washington went to Waterford in 1753 to deliver the dimwitties, or dumbwitties as I call them, letter to the French. So there's a lot of history there, because like I said, my family and Guyasuta and Corn Planter, they were back and forth at that same time doing a lot of the speaking and a lot of the things between the nation with Haudenosaunee, and so that's where a lot of that goes to.
I only found out the other day that you're descended from Guyasuta, which, I still like. That was the first day camp I went to. Camp Guyasuta. I still have T-shirts from that. I'll never get rid of them. But and that was the first camp that I ever spent the night at as well, and seen his statue many times in Guyasuta Square. Out in the Sharpsburg Etna
Right.
joint. And so now something that I'd like to talk with you about, if you're open to it, which is I've never seen you do this, I think, but I understand you're a Guyasuta.
Right.
All right. Is that something we can talk about?
Yeah, we can talk some about it. It's
Okay.
a lot of times when about our ceremonies and stuff in it's because Guyasuta is one of our false face societies, and I've been a doorkeeper there, but a lot of times we don't talk about a lot of what happens once we go in the longhouse or we go into those ceremonies, but it's one of the oldest medicine societies in North America. It goes back to about 2,000 years, but it's traditional medicine, traditional teachings on who we are as Ongohoe people and how we travel and how we do our medicine and do our healings and stuff for people. So there's a number of other societies that are like that. That are just as old on our reserve, on our territory. So a lot of times, when we're working with these ceremonies, it's protected. I know there are books out there, and Fenton wrote a couple books on false face societies, and but like I said, a lot of it, what happens, once we're there, we're doing ceremonies. That's some of the things that we don't talk about, because that's between us and whoever we're working with and the Creator.
So I think I asked you this before. I remember, I think, a lot of it. But how did, you were selected for that when you were young, is that right?
I started off, I was in a hospital. I got sick. I ended up with emphysema and pleurisy all together. And I was probably, it was 1969, so I was, 9 years old, 8 years old, and I wasn't supposed to make it out of the hospital. And my mother got a hold of a couple of the elders and people on the reserve, and they came to the hospital and did block the doors and did ceremony and stuff for me, because the doctors told my mother that I wasn't going to be leaving the hospital. And so they did ceremony, and that's basically how I got started into that society. So some of it is, you're either brought into societies and stuff, either as an invite or through sickness or illness. We have other societies and stuff that we have, that people join or ask to become part, because their particular skill set is needed as either as a doorkeeper or fireman or singer,
What does it mean to be a doorkeeper?
A doorkeeper is a lot of times is once they start ceremonies, you take care of the door. Nobody's allowed in or out, and so that's that's basically like being security.
You were 9 when that happened. Do you remember it?
Yeah.
Well,
I can remember everything just like it was that day, being right there. Because I remember they put tubes and stuff in, and I was in back then they just used put a tent over top of you, and that's and then they came in and they just removed everything and then wet towels down and blocked the doors and put chairs up against it, and then they just did their ceremonies.
Wow.
And it I've seen a lot of the ceremonies and a lot of the things before that, so I kind of knew like what to expect, but it's in traditional ceremonies when we're doing things, it's just like sweat lodges and anipis and stuff. There's until you've been in one, it becomes life changing. So, and then I tell people this is, once you've been into, a sweat lodge or a nipi that's been run traditionally the way they're supposed to be, it leaves a lasting impression on you.
Mm-hmm. I remember doing sweat lodges out at Standing Rock, and with Wilfred Jones and Linda Black Elk. How did you meet them anyway? Because like the Lakota and the Seneca, pretty far apart, right? So,
Well,
but I mean, how did you get it?
Lakota actually, are from the northern Carolinas, so they come up through. But the Lakotas sit under the Haudenosaunee as younger brethren. I was out in 1998, and we did a program where Wilford and his brother Guy Jones were in Dayton, Ohio, and we got to talking, and I had relatives that were actually living out in Little Eagle that were married to a couple of their relatives, and so when they came to Dayton, we got to sit and talk, and then they ended up coming to Dave Weinkauf's house, and then we did lodges and ceremonies and stuff there, and like I said, that was in '98, and so they've been family ever since then. And so a lot of times when we're doing programs, Linda, myself, we have done a lot of herb walks and a lot of medicine walks and stuff all over the country. And so every time I get back out there, we always get together, and with her husband, Luke Black Elk, and so kind of seeing the boys and seeing everybody graduating now in college, kind of we sit down and says, oh man, makes us feel old. But we've traveled a lot and done a lot of programs over the years, and so we've been pretty much a close-knit family ever since then.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, I remember I'm still connected with Linda, James, and I think Luke on Facebook and all that, and it's cool to see them graduate and stuff. I think at one point I was working at the library here in Pittsburgh, and there was a picture of Chief Gall that I hadn't seen like on the reservation anywhere. I'm sure James had seen it before, but I took a picture of him like, hey, here, here he is. But
PZ, actually PZ was actually credited, for the one that, that ended Custer's life.
Yeah.
And, and they talk about him, and that's why their youngest son is named PZ. Mm-hmm. And which PZ was Chief Gall, but he got that name because they said that, he was, after a buffalo hunt, he was sitting there and he was eating the liver and then ate the gall and stuff, and so that's how he got the name Chief Gall. But
Was it not normal to eat that part?
it it's used in different ceremonies, but it generally isn't. They would take different parts of like the heart and stuff like that, and they would dip it in, you know, into the gall and stuff and eat it to use it for parts of ceremonies. And I know I've talked to people that, they were going to try it, and then next thing you know, they said they were throwing up and stuff. And I said, well, our constitution and your constitution is quite a bit different. Because a lot of times, we're used to eating traditional food and kind of stay away from McDonald's.
Right. Absolutely. When was the first time you played lacrosse?
Oh, first time I played lacrosse was I was probably 7 or 8, playing with the kids around on Tonawanda and that, and it was nice, it was kind of like everybody just joined in, and a lot of times, sometimes it was like, a team against a team, but a lot of times it was just everybody just throwing the ball around and learning how to play. And I know when I was first, my Uncle Stick, he gave me J.C. Penney catalogs with hockey socks, and those were my first leg pads were J.C. Penney catalogs, and I still have my Freddy Krueger mask.
Oh yeah.
And so, but people talk about, oh yeah, it was safety. I said, yeah. I said, but you get slapped with that plastic mask and you've been sweating. I mean, it's like getting slapped with a ruler or something. You really figure that one out real fast, that you don't want to get hit in the face.
Wow. Yeah, I can't even imagine. I think I played catch with you one time, and I knew you were holding back quite a bit, and it was a lot of fun. Those lacrosse sticks that, like I've seen the one you use as a keeper, is huge, and then some of the other ones, those take like a year to make traditionally. Is that right?
Yeah, a lot of them do, because you're cutting the tree green, and then you steam it, then you bend it, and then it's got to sit and cure, and then you start working on it, and then it sits and cures some more, and then once you get the memory into it, and then you do your final sanding and drilling your holes, and then lacing up the gut web, and then the other strings and stuff on it. So it does take a long time, and when they take a tree down, they burn tobacco and stuff for the tree, and everything's done, to keep everything kind of in the sacred way. Lacrosse is actually one of our medicine societies. It's called the Creator's Game, and it was used, to play for the strength of the families between the clans and between the different mortes. But the original games, I mean, they were played on fields over a mile long. When we had the Great Law recital at Tonawanda, it actually became for the 4th of July, and so this was the first time that we probably had, I'd say, a couple hundred players playing in a big field, in our shorts and moccasins with wooden sticks, and just like the old game was originally done. And it was so much fun and so much of a healing and blessing and stuff to the community, to do it that way. So, a lot of times, you don't get that chance. And so to be able to play and, with generations of people that grew up, and, and some of them, are professional lacrosse players. Some of them retired professional lacrosse players. So it was pretty unique, and to me it was one of the best days of my life to be able to play, with all these people all at one time and lifting up the Creator's Game, for our people and the nation.
Did anyone film that, or is that something you shouldn't
No,
film?
that wasn't filmed,
Mm-hmm.
and because of the eagle feathers and
Mm-hmm.
playing, playing, in the old way. So a lot of it wasn't, like I said, it wasn't filmed or.
Mm-hmm. And in the old way, does that mean like pretty rough or
Oh,
like?
we
'Cause it's
played.
already rough. I've heard
Well,
stories from you of what what you guys get up to. I'm like, how do you make it to 25, let alone 60? Like,
well, we
you're throwing bullets at each other.
right, and when we're playing box lacrosse as a goalie, I mean that ball's coming at you 130, 135 miles an hour.
And it's not a soft ball.
Right, and the box ball is harder than a field lacrosse ball,
Yeah.
and a lot of field lacrosse players do not make it as a box lacrosse player,
Hmm.
and a lot of box lacrosse players will excel. Tim Horton was a box lacrosse player. I remember in the '70s and stuff, seeing him and being able to play in some of the stuff. Troy Polamalu, Jim Brown, some of these guys were some of the best lacrosse players, and
Yeah, I
be
didn't
able
know
to
that.
come to so many different places. And so a lot of times when we have, we have some of these programs, and be able to talk to some of the people that played back then.
Yeah.
But our lacrosse has had controversies and stuff when they had the Indigenous games. The World Lacrosse League went to go to England. They wouldn't allow them, the Haudenosaunee team, off the plane because we didn't have U.S. passports,
Mm-hmm.
and so that caused a lot of hassles and stuff. And so they just kind of remember that.
Yeah. Well,
But
they got tired of losing, I think.
yeah.
You but when you say playing it in the old way, what's like, does that just mean like not in the box, like just out in the field?
Yeah, it's in the field. A lot of times, when they played some of the original games, I mean, you were going through the woods, you were going through the fields, over creeks or whatever,
Mm-hmm.
but you played with a traditional ball, either one made out of leather or one made out of a root ball.
Mm.
But always played with wooden sticks. And a lot of times our wooden sticks, even some of our new sticks, have like nylon webbing and lacing and stuff in it. I have a goalie stick that was redone for me, and the gentleman up in Haudenosaunee that took it, his family, the Mitchell brothers, have been stick makers for years, and they took it, and they redid it for me so I could use it during midwinters and some of the medicine games. But that stick was, most of 200 years old.
Whoa.
And so when they brought it back, he brought me back all of the other pieces and stuff that were with it, and the original gut webbing and that, and they burnt tobacco for it, and then we sent it on its way. So now that's the only time I use that stick is in ceremonial games.
Speaking of stuff that's like you mentioned, the lacrosse sticks 200 years old. You've shown me a pair of moccasins that had cavalry uniform fabric on them.
Yep.
And right after you showed me that, you showed me a little bone whistle.
Right.
I believe it was from an eagle bone.
Yep.
And you said something that really impressed me about it, where right after showing me those moccasins, you're like, this is really old. Is that still around?
Yep. And I still carry that.
Oh, thank God. All right.
And 28 years as a sun dancer, but that actually came through Fool's Crow family. So it was passed down, and actually an elder that was Canadian Dan's buddy and stuff had it, and when he passed, he ended up with that at when he was at Leonard Crow Dog's dance, and then it was passed down to him, and then when myself and Warren Sky, who was here, part of one of the people when they did the sculpting and stuff for the Guyasuta. My uncle was down in, and he had it, and then it was ended up being passed to me, and like I said, I've carried it for almost 30 years now.
Wow. So when you say it's really old, how old is really old?
It's probably, I would say it's less than 200 years old, but the eagle that it came from, and I've had people, kind of look at it, and as through the repository, we deal with a lot of bald eagles and golden eagles, for ceremonies and stuff. But to find a wing bone that's that size, for one, it had to been, very mature bird itself. And then when it was made and how it was made and then passed down.
Wow. So, you've, okay, so there's another thing I want to ask you about, because I've been wondering for a while, and you're someone that I will believe anything you tell me. All right. Especially if you're messing with me. But yeah, you're like, because there's a number of things where you'd tell me, oh, like we'd drive past a place or whatever, and you'd tell me about something historic that happened there, and then later someone would say something similar happened at another place, and you'd tell me like that's not that didn't happen there or something. Basically, I've listened to you very carefully over the years, and you're someone that I trust with everything. So when and if I start to talk about something that maybe we can't talk about here, just cut me off and no one will ever see it. When we were at Standing Rock, we went to this bust statue of Sitting Bull, and people said, oh, yes, this is where he's buried. And everybody we were with, I believe including you, but we're like, yeah, this isn't really where he's buried.
Right. Then
we went to a place that I would never be able to find again. It's I was like, this is about as hidden in the middle of nowhere, I guess, that I could imagine. It's been a while, but that's how I remember it anyway. And there was a cabin out there, and there was a plot, a little graveyard, and there was, I think, a plaque, and we were told this is actually Sitting Bull's grave. We did a ceremony and stuff. Was that really his grave?
Yes, that is where he is, in Mobridge, and there's two different places that he was said to be buried. We kind of laughed because knowing the family in Tatankanea, it was Sitting Bull, he was buried in front of his cabin back when he was killed. But that cabin is out on towards Wounded Knee Creek, but it's also about 38 miles of a path. Mm-hmm. and I've walked that 38 miles. I was given the dried buffalo and given the water and stuff to walk, and I left before light in the morning, and it was well after dark, after 11 o'clock in the evening when I came back.
Wow.
But yeah, we kind of laughed because, like in Mobridge, they literally buried donkey bones there, and guess somebody's going to steal them. They say, so they're just going to steal somebody's ass.
That's funny. Oh, so the natives buried.
Right.
Okay, cool. That's funny.
But a lot of it is it's like a lot of the sacred graves. There's not a whole lot of people that know where a lot of these people are buried, just because, we talked about the Dakota 38, and in 1862 when that happened, there was one mass grave and they were all buried in there. But by the time of the next morning, all of those bodies, all but one or two of them, were gone because the looters and people wanted the bodies, and so it's always been, you see things like that, and people, we always try to, not mark graves, because once you've passed on, that's where you just need to be. It's like, north of here where Guyasuta is buried.
That's at Custologa Town,
right? And in the 70s, when we came down it was like, I think it was 1975. I was asked by some of the scout leaders and stuff to come, and we actually cleaned up that graveyard. And
wait, what year was that?
We would have been 75.
Oh, okay.
And so we actually cleaned up that graveyard, and I remember my mom and some of the other elders talking about that they had been there and they knew some of the other people that lived there before. So being able to be there where my relative was buried, it was heart-wrenching, because of some of the archaeological excavations and stuff that they did, trying to look for some of the different graves, and to me, we don't go digging in other people's cemeteries, so why come digging ours? But it just seems that, but that even like that goes back to any time that they wanted to Christianize, one of the indigenous communities. The church always built their churches on top of our graveyards, and that's been since time immemorial. They've done that and done that and done that.
I remember a story that I think you told me, and I think Jamie Jacobs told me too at one point. Could be wrong, because I think I've only really met him once. We played catch too. But by the way, Jamie Jacobs told a hilarious joke. Do you know what I'm talking about? The falling rock? Oh my gosh, that was so funny. But when he told that at this University of Dayton symposium, I'm filming, and he opens, I think he opened with that. And like, nobody except you realized, even like when he said the joke, like it's like, oh, now there's signs everywhere that say that whole joke, and I was like, I thought you were just telling me a story, dude, and it was great. But he, it might have been him, but I think you told me about there's journals that belong to Jesuit priests,
Right,
that are in the possession of the Seneca Nation. Is that right?
Right.
Or
There's I know of, I think 14 altogether.
14 separate journals.
Right.
Oh, wow.
And the one that I actually got to read and looked at was Father John Lapierre, I think was what his name was, and it was sad because some of the things that we looked at in there, talked about baptisms and stuff, and then how they would hold the babies under the water until the bubbles quit. Then if they let them up and they come to the top and they started to breathe, then they were Christ-like and they were fine. Mm-hmm. And through those even talked about, how the church, developed smallpox and how it was used. This area of Pennsylvania, this Bushy Run was the first time that criminal warfare is what I would call it, but biological warfare was used against indigenous people. And that's where they negotiated. They gave them blankets and stuff to stay, but they gave them blankets that were infested with smallpox. Mm-hmm. They talk about the pandemic, and I said, you don't know what a pandemic is. Yeah. Sullivan's campaign lasted just over 6 months, and over 6 million indigenous people were just completely annihilated, whole communities. Mm-hmm. and you start looking at that and reading this stuff from the United States government numbers, and that's what they're saying. That the annihilation of 80+% of the indigenous people in the area. And you start looking at that, and I tell people, I said, well, you look at the government's numbers on anything else they tell you and stuff, so that they're not going to be right. Yeah, but they're saying 6 million and 80+% of the indigenous community gone through Sullivan's campaign. And they had the nerve and stuff to call Joseph Brant, call him Butcher Brant. But that's when George Washington was given the name Haudenosaunee. And people say, well, it's town destroyer. So, well, no, it means he bites on the town. And so, but that's, and that goes back to that whole thing with Corn Planter being friends, and then, with him and as a statesman went to Washington, D.C. and talked and worked on a lot of treaties and tried to, even like with the land promise and everything, he was given the Corn Planters grant, and then that was taken from him. But a lot of his things that he had, he burned them because of what George Washington did.
Wow.
But a lot of that history, it's not talked about. And they were saying, going on. I know tonight on in Erie, WQLN is the third. I've been in 3 of the Chronicle series, but this Chronicle series tonight that they have, it would be the 3rd one that I was in, and it's on Pontiac's Rebellion, and it talks about that, and that's one of the things that's discussed in there is, how the land promises and how things were taken and set up, but as soon as the native or the indigenous people were given, it was taken away just as fast. And they talk about, I can't remember if it was Peterson boys or Pippin boys and stuff, but they were from this area, and they just traveled around and just annihilating native communities. And finally they kind of stepped in and stopped them, but then in a lot of that, like I said, when Pontiac's Rebellion and stuff got to Bushy Run and then Fort Pitt, them before Fort Pitt and stuff, it never really got it, because it was basically a stalemate. It wasn't a win or lose for either side.
So who taught you this stuff? Like, so many things, whether it's history or craft or you're a blacksmith. I think you were a rodeo clown at one point, right? Is that true?
Yeah, I spent 23 years as a professional.
23 years, jeez! I didn't know that.
As a professional bullfighter and rodeo clowns, and just lately, a friend of mine, she sent me a picture from 1985 of me sitting on the back of a bucking horse getting ready to come out at a rodeo.
Oh my gosh.
And it was funny because it'd been 40 years. And they thought, is this you? And I'm like, yeah, that is me. And where'd this picture come from? But it was one of those. But that picture, I had a stroke in 2010. And I lost a lot of memory, it's like cognizant things that you don't think of. But that picture and a couple of things that she talked about was it like immediately turned on a light that took things right back to 1985. Wow. And that I could remember stuff that I literally forgot until to now. And just the learning and how I was taught. When I was young, living on the reservation, my stepdad would come up, and my mother would send me to Gaydad's house, who was, and he wasn't a chief then, but that's where I stayed. But my learning and the things that I gained from him and Francis Hill was my uncle that I lived with, and grew up with, and then Ted Gordon and some of the other people that, I mean, they made so much impression on me. But a lot of times when they were sitting there, they were carving, they were doing things, they would just hand me a knife, and start doing it. And if you did something wrong, they would correct you. But them speaking back and forth in Seneca and English and stuff, sometimes you just kind of listen and to the conversations and trying to figure things out into your carving or a lot of the things that you're doing. But that's how I learn, and I've been fortunate that I had some of the best craftsmen teachers, and it's like now I'll be up on the reservation and I'll go down and we'll sit with Stonehorse, my clan brother, and we'll be doing carvings, we'll be talking about stuff, and we're some of the oldest AIM members left from the original American Indian movement. But that's a lot of times we sit and we're doing carvings and we're doing some of our different crafts, and we talk about how things that we learn. And so now when I get young people, they come and I said, well, this is what we did. Sit down and we do it and we show you. I was doing corn husk dolls, and Neville Springs, he sat down, well, here, this is what I do, and so he's sitting there, and here we're in the middle of his restaurant, and he's going in the kitchen, he's pulling out things, and then we're sitting there putting the things together and doing it, and getting everything put together. And so that was a lot of what we did was, and that's how we learn. When we wanted to learn something, we just went to an elder or somebody that was proficient. Like Jamie Jacobs. He's one of the top quill workers.
I've seen his work. It's awesome.
And I've been the benefit, because my benefit is I helped him, and I made him his first loom and stuff for quilling and that, and going through and the things that we did, and we'd go places, and he'd text me or call me, hey, there's a porcupine at this, and he wasn't allowed to put him in his car, but he knew I'd pick him up, and the roadkill mobile carried him around, but doing a lot of stuff like that, and then seeing where he's come from, and now he's been in France teaching and showing his work, and Santa Fe market and stuff, and a lot of his work and stuff is sought after, and I've as him being my nephew and stuff, but I have a lot of excellent quality pieces. And I know Bob Griffin has even said, and him and John Buxton, a lot of the things that I carry are in their paintings.
Wow.
And so when we see a lot of these...
Robert Griffin?
Yeah.
Yeah. I met him like 2 or 3 times, actually, because he has his paintings at the Ligonier Highland Games sometimes, or I haven't been there in a while, actually. I don't know if he still does, but love his work.
Yeah, he's... I've done a couple photo shoots and stuff with him, and... we did one at Bushy Run, and this year when we were down there, and him, and he'd lost his wife, and he was there with John Buxton, and now John's wife is is getting older and she's having problems and stuff. But it's like a lot of times historically, sitting and talking with these guys, and we're showing them what we're doing. And one of the things, people talk about Catlin and his paintings and stuff. Catlin, did a lot of paintings and stuff, but he kind of faked a lot of the things to make it look more. Where with Buxton and Griffin, they take the time. I know, Griffin, Bob's. He's got a couple books out, and he's worked with Mike Galvin from Ganondagan, and Mike is, he's done a lot like I have. He has been there. He put in the time. He's been to the places. He's learned those crafts. He's learned those skills. And so Mike, and he works with Jamie and a couple of the other guys, and now they're teaching the younger generations. And it's, like I said, it's just like when I grew up, I learned from the elders. I learned from, the different aunties and clan mothers and stuff, and learning about the medicine and the plants and stuff, and then a lot of the things that we do with them for ceremony.
Yeah, I went on, I think, 2 different nature walks with Linda Black Elk with you too, and geez, every time I got to do that, I was so frustrated because I'm like, I'm not gonna remember all this. This is it's just mind blowing. What just the amount of knowledge that she packs into that walk. It's like, oh yeah, we can eat this. Oh, we use this for that, and all the different names for it. Brilliant stuff. So, I wanted to. All right, so you're 60 now.
Yep.
Okay. You have a daughter, is right?
I got 4 daughters
4
and a
daughters.
son.
Okay, I was gonna say I don't know how. So you've got 5 kids.
Yep.
Wow. Have you ever been married?
Yep. I was married for well over 30 years.
Wow.
Yep. We were married for 34, together for 36.
Wow. Are they still around, or?
Yep, my kids are still here, and then we have a ball doing things, and it's like yesterday after the house fire and stuff. My second oldest daughter, her and my first grandson, they were there, so we were helping repairing the roof on my camper and stuff, and he's walking around, and he's got sticks, he's pounding on things and doing stuff, and it's funny because my daughter will post videos. When I was down at Sharon, I've done the water blessing there for Sharon since 2015 or 16, since the second one they did.
Mm-hmm.
And
I think I was that's for like the fire festival, right? I think I was at the first one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We did a dance program and stuff there, but like she did a video and stuff. I'm on the river singing, and he's up there, he's singing along, and he's like a year and a half old, and he understands those words and singing and stuff. Yeah. And that's how we keep things going. Yeah. It's like she had posted another video she was at her sister-in-law's daughter's soccer match, and then Rowan didn't want to sit down, and so they went over to the playgrounds and stuff, and the little riding bouncy horse there. Well, first thing Rowan did is he walked up, got underneath to make sure the feet were all cleaned out, like he's watched me so many times trimming the horses. And then she just thought that was hilarious, so she took a video and stuff of it, posted it, and people were just laughing. That here's some year and a half old, already knows what a lot of what the proper things are, and that's how my kids grew up. They grew up in the woods with me with the draft horses, and they got to travel a lot of places, and a couple of them went on when we did the Ride for America, from the bombing of the year, almost a year anniversary. Well, it was the bombing of the Merrill Building down to flight, the one in Somerset there,
the flight
93 or whatever. Yeah, gotcha. And then we went to Gettysburg, and then we met the horseless riders and stuff from New York City. They met us there, and we all went down through the valley at Gettysburg, and then down to the Pentagon, where I had my own escorts. And they have kind of issues and stuff having an AIM member in a government facility. So I don't mind, because I can piss them off any place I go. So, but then we went down. I wore my regalia and stuff, but we walked. They rode the horses, and I walked down to the base there at Ground Zero. And and like with that, it's just, I was given the Western Heritage Preservation Legacy Award for all the work and stuff I did for that. And and that's a lot of times, the kids, when they were growing up, being able to go to a lot of these places and see things that a lot of kids didn't get to see, and be able to travel. And the teachers would always ask them when they got school the next year, "Oh, well, where did you go this year?"
Mm-hmm. I'm pretty sure I know the answer to this. Have you ever broken a bone?
Well,
so how many?
I was at like 199. I broke like 180 when I was clowning and stuff, and then shoeing horses and stuff going through. But I didn't make it to 200 until I did it to myself.
Oh.
My oldest daughter was there, and I let my horse trailer out, and they had bent the hitch, so I grabbed the big bar and I had pulled under there, and she was sitting on the tailgate, and I pulled it back and I slapped myself right in the face, broke my cheekbone. She said I knocked myself out. I don't remember it, but I ended up having to go to the hospital. And
oh man!
Yeah, but she was old enough to drive, so I guess she was the one that drove me to the hospital.
Jeez, 200 breaks, fractures, and all. That's
I'm up to, I think right now I'm at 2.
How do you still have all your fingers?
Well, you see the scars, they've been reattached. I've got, my thumb's been reattached, and that's why I end up having my first stroke was because of medical malpractice or their screw up.
Are all of these injuries like accidents?
Yeah, pretty much everything's. And
well, I mean, has anyone ever, or any of them from a fight?
Oh, there's ones from fights, and then I've got scars from on my arms and stuff from, the police trying to put handcuffs on me. But as a Muay Thai specialist, they don't have to worry about my hands. It's my elbows and knees and everything else.
Shins,
and I've got scars from it, but they never got handcuffs on me. But.
Well, I guess that kind of leads into my next. Have you ever been stabbed or shot in a fight?
I've been cut a few times, and usually it's all been because of racial violence, and being places and being an AIM member or being at protests and stuff. I'm not the one that stands in the back, and I said, they're not going to hurt me. And I've done more damage to myself, in some of the ceremonies and stuff than what they can do.
Mm-hmm.
And if I die for a cause, that's fine.
There's a little verse that I learned that I think you might like. It's, "Then out spake brave Horatius, the captain of the gate. To every man upon this earth death cometh soon or late, and how can man die better than facing fearful odds for the ashes of his fathers and the temples of his gods?"
Yep, I've heard that before, and it was like, I've had people jump up in my face and stuff, and I says, I was a professional bullfighter for 23 years. I've hit head to head the bulls, and I've been right there in their face. And I said, you don't scare me.
What does scare you?
What does scare me?
I mean, bulls, maybe. I don't know.
No, I would say losing a child. Unfortunately, with what I do, I've seen, and it's one of the things I talked about earlier at another interview, and then I'll be talking about tonight at Antonio's there with Jim Skiff. Back to losing my family, and like with the death of my niece, when I created my CD and stuff, and and we talk about, and that's one of the things that we talk about is that what comes out of death. I've had to do so many ceremonies and stuff for youth, that committed suicide, who were murdered by somebody else. And so when I look at that, and that's, I guess that's the thing that would scare me most, is to lose a child. And I've had to make moccasins for infants that had died. And that's one of the hardest things you can ever do. But at the same time, I felt respected because I was asked to do that for them. I've done, I've sang at so many funerals, and I like doing the weddings and stuff, but unfortunately, it's like we were sitting there talking about, a lot of the friends in Two Trees, and I've had to sing at so many of their funerals. And so when we look at that, I guess that would be is the biggest thing. And one of the most dear people in my life, she asked me the other day, and she's like my longest love, my first love, and she was like, when I die, I want you to sing at my funeral. And I said, I told her tears, I says, I hope I'm not there. I'm hoping I'm gone before that. And I said, I don't want people to cry for me. I've been dead twice in 2 different surgeries. I've woke up in surgeries, but I don't fear death. I don't fear pain. But it's I used to always go in and sneak in at night and check on my kids when they were little. And I would poke at them to make sure they were still breathing, or even the grandkids and stuff. Those are the most sacred things to me. I've sat with a lot of people where I was the last voice, where they asked me to sing for them, when they're at that time, and so I guess that's. That is my fear of losing a child. I've buried my entire family. And I look at that and and dealing with suicide. And one of the conversations I got into a couple of weeks ago, when we were doing one of the WQED programs and stuff, and I says, I know suicide. I've been there. And I said, after losing my family and stuff, I was like, when I was clowning and stuff, I took shots from bulls that should have just killed me, and I walked away from them. Yeah. And it was like literally, a death wish that I wasn't going to take my life, but if that bull took my life, I left this world in honor. Yeah. And a lot of times, I've dealt with with people that, ended up, dying of suicide by cop because they weren't going to kill themselves, but they felt more that it would be more of like a martyr, to have them, be shot, and so, it's dealing with that. When I talk to a lot of young people like you, like when we first met, and and I talk to parents that I've done ceremonies and sang at their their children's funerals, and listen to them, and they say, you're the only reason that we got through that. But that's what I do. That's where I've been led to. And it's like I was saying about creating that CD, and like Dave and those guys, they'll sit there and talk about, some of the things that we've done, places. And I said, I don't want, thanks is thanks. But I don't. A lot of time, like when we were at the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, people, you got to do this, you got to do that. It's, my signature's on the wall. And it's probably the only signature I know that the Seneca name written in Seneca is on that wall. And it's in the Hall of Fame downstairs, But
What's your Seneca name?
Haudenosaunee.
Haudenosaunee.
Yeah, it means he helps always. That's my elder's name.
Wow, that's appropriate. I think you one time, I think it was the first time I had met you, and we were coming back from the res, and we were in the same van. And I forget exactly what happened at first. I had asked someone else a question, and they responded in their own way. I don't even remember who it was. Okay, you might. I don't know. I'm happy not knowing. But right after that, like we stop at like I don't know, Denny's or something. We're getting lunch. You get out of the van. I'm like 20, I think. Oh my gosh, yeah, it was a long time ago. Yeah, I'm like 20 years old. And he said, Peter, get over here. I just walk up to you. You gave me a big hug. And then you put your arm around me as we walked in. And you just said, I don't want you to ever be afraid to ask a question. You have a question, you ask it.
Right.
And that I have, more than 10 years. More than 10 years now, I think. And I still remember that.
And that's one of the things I tell people, we did the dumb question. I said, no, the only dumb question is one you don't ask. I said, just because you don't know, it's not your ignorance. It's just because you don't know. And I have no problem people asking me questions. And my kids will tell you, well, you better think about that before you ask him because people tell me I have no filter. And I said, I don't care. I said, I don't. I'm not going to stand there and lie to you. I said, I won't lie for my kids. I won't lie for anybody. Mm-hmm. And I said, you ask, I'm going to tell you. So you may not like the truth, but I don't care.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you would never lie to me. And it's something I value.
It's like your dad texted me last night and says, hey, if you're down here and you need a place to sleep, he says, stay over. He says, I got 3 cats. He says, but he says my house is open. I said, well, I said appreciate that, and I've got, but the thing of it is, it's our legacy. What are you going to leave to your kids? Mm-hmm. What did you learn? The people that have been here, the people that passed on in your life. This is now your wife. It's like when you got a hold of me about the knives and stuff. Your groomsman says, challenge accepted. I'm going to give you the best work I have. I said, because you're family. That's why I call you nephew. But when we do stuff like that, we give the best that we can, or the best that we can afford, or the best that we can make, because that carries us over, and that's all part of that 7 generations teaching. My 7th generation goes back to Guyasuta. 6th generation goes to corn planter. But everything that we do, if we give the best that we can, the best that we have to that next generation, that's helping build that generation. That's not breaking them down. Mm-hmm. So when we sit there and we talk and we doing a lot of these programs, and I've had interviewers say this, I don't believe you just said that. And I said, well, I'm not, again, I tell you, I said, if you don't want to know the answer and you don't want to know what I think, I said, don't ask me. Mm-hmm. One of the ladies I talked to today, she was talking about Guyasuta and how that everything came about and doing that, the statue and everything. And I said, well, we talk about Guyasuta and Haudenosaunee, and I know when Warren Sky was there and he was talking, doing the presentation, and Paul Winnie, who was he was the model, and I remember when one of the first things is that Warren told the guy that was carving, he says, don't you dare put us lower than Haudenosaunee. And so that's why he's up on that rock and they're looking eye to eye. And everybody's saying, well, George Washington's 6'4" and he's this tower of a man. It's just, he's not a tower of a man. I said, he wants to be there, do whatever. I said, that's fine. He says, but, learning your legacy.
Yeah, that's I'd never noticed that one. Yeah, wow. But with the statue height and
Yeah.
stuff, so.
But yeah, and that's why he's up on that rock, and he's in authority position. He's leaning down and he's leaning forward, and the way his hands and everything are, where and he's looking him right in the eye.
Yeah, it's a really powerful. Because like normally a statue's by itself, right? You got two, and they're that. And I'm like, are these guys gonna fight?
Well, and a lot of people say, yeah. So we've seen your tribute to Haudenosaunee, and they laugh and seeing my picture standing between them.
Well, I have a picture. I was telling Allie about that because I showed it to her. I'm like, hey, he's related. I didn't know this. And it's like, oh, what's he doing with George Washington there? And I'm like, I'll talk to you about it later. It's a lot, but yeah, it's, I think I want to talk with you for like 7 hours, Leon, and then do another 7 by a fire. But I guess I want to, there's a couple things I want to see if we can talk about. One is, you've told me before about, I believe it's the moccasin dance,
Right,
for the Scots,
right,
and all that. When is that? And is that at Tonawanda?
They have it at different places.
Oh, okay.
Because I think it's every 2 years. Sometimes it's in Scotland and Ireland, and then sometimes it's in North America and stuff. But it's all about the potato famine and stuff, and about the red skin potatoes being taken. Help with. Because we look at the Irish and the Scots as Ongahoe because they're original, and so, that's the word that we use for ourselves as original people or first people. So, we look at them and, just like anybody else that's traditionally bloodlines from, a country, they are Ongahoe, they are original. And so, and you do see that. You do see where they, like I said, they do the moccasin dance. And they stick the claymore in, and then everybody dances around it. But it's a dance of graciousness and unity. That we had something that we could give to your people and to help them make it through to where they are now. So it's, but like I said, they have it at different places, but I think it's every 2 years they switch which country and stuff that they have it in.
Well, if you ever need a piper, me and my dad, hit us up.
Yeah.
Anyway. All right. So, I guess I'm going to try and do this as 2 sort of topics here. So were you told me where you were born, but was that on the Tonawanda Reservation?
Nope.
No? Okay. But you lived there?
Right.
All right. At least for a time when you lived there, you were like hunting for like pigeon for like every day, right? Is that,
yeah,
I remembering
places of farmers that had pigeons and stuff, and I would go down there and then bing them with a slingshot or with a BB gun and stuff, and then it's like, it's just squab. It's good eating.
And so there's one other person I've met that I know of who is Seneca. He's my old Boy Scout Indian lore counselor from summer camp. And he was Mr. Taylor. At the time that I knew him, he was, from what I understand, active in the culture. But how am I trying to say this? I don't know anybody else like you. There's so many things about you that, I don't know, whenever I've told people about you and I don't have a whole lot of time, to tell them about you, I'll be like, he's hardcore, like he's the real deal. of who and what he is. And I don't know how to, like, I don't know if my question is like, on on Tonawanda is like the kind of things that you hold important and the things that matter to you, and I guess the traditions that you perpetuate. Are there a lot more like you, I guess, is the question.
There there's a few of us, but unfortunately, we're running into generations that don't want to get involved, but we
Get involved with what?
even with a lot of the teaching or learning, or being we get people they'll just go to smoke dances and stuff because it's money in it. But to be out there and pounding the road for 8-9 months out of the year teaching and going places and not getting making the money that a lot of other people are getting teaching and stuff. But when we get young people that ask or they want to learn, I says, I've done splint poundings. I've teaching them how to make the splint and stuff to use for the baskets. Teach silver work, done some quill work, beading, carvings. But I'm just hoping that everything that in what I do, I can pass it down. Even off the reservation and stuff. I said, I've lived that Western cowboy life. I've lived on the range, guiding, and I've lived the rodeo life. I've lived the mountain man life, running the trap line and dog sleds and doing things like that and teaching. But one of the ladies asked me earlier today, she says, well, what is your legacy? And I said, I would say my legacy as a craftsman would be, if I can teach one person, to become a craftsman in their life, or even, put the time in, I says, that continues my legacy, and it's like my kids. One of the things that, one of the other questions she was asked about, and I said, well, I grew up, as the abused. And I said, but what I did when I got married and I had children, I said, my children never seen that abuse. And that's one of the things that I pride myself on, is that I've given as much as I could, to other young kids. And I get letters and cards from students back to 1998 of doing these programs for UD and doing these trips, and I've got a stack of cards and how I impacted them, that it's affected them. And now I'm getting cards from some of these kids that were there 15, 17 years ago and still writing me, thanking me, because now they're raising kids. But that was always like when I explained with her, that to me, my legacy is, what I can teach you, and the things that we talk about. If we can correct history, if we can solve, keeping one young person from dying, to me, that's worth everything. If I have to give up my life to protect somebody, I have no problem doing that. I mean, I've stood in front of cop beating people and took the beatings and stuff, and I said, I don't care. That doesn't bother me. I said, you may think it's going to hurt me. I said, but what makes them even worse is when I stand there and laugh at them, because, pain doesn't hurt, but their pride hurts them. And I said, I can stand up, I might be bleeding or bruised and stuff, and I'll stand back up and laugh. I don't care. Like I said, I've been through that life. I've been through those times, and I've seen suicide, and I've dealt with suicide, and but to me, like I said, anything I can do to to promote, some young person's life, I said, that's what I'm going to do.
Well, you're sitting across from someone that you've done exactly that with. Thank you so much for taking time to talk with me. It's always a privilege, and hope you have a good show tonight as well. I'm sadly going to be working late, which is terrible, but thank you so much.
Well, they're doing a live broadcast of it, so you can just
okay. Well, hang on. I can do that.
You can pull it up. And
yeah, just have that on while I'm... Yeah, that's great.
Yeah, because they're doing two live feeds, and then they'll have a live video on Facebook, too.
Oh, great. All right. I'm tuning in. I'm so glad. Nice. All right. Well, great. Well, thanks again, Leon.
Hey, anytime. Love you, bud, and it's always great to see you, and we'll talk at you soon.
You too.
Hey, I hope you enjoyed that episode. If you want to start your own podcast, why wait? Reach out to us at StudioME.me, and I hope you hear me again soon.